Assalamu alaikum. Look, most entrepreneurs think that stress is their biggest problem. But what if I told you that stress is actually your greatest tool when it comes to growth, right? What if I told you that if you just re-look and revisit the way you look at stress, it can actually be the thing that allows you to grow exponentially. In fact, you will start to intentionally seek out for more sources of stress in your life. So if that's what you want, inshallah, make sure you stay tuned and you listen to the end of this video. Now, we're gonna look at this from a science perspective, practical applications, everything. I'm going to show you guys how stress actually fuels growth. Now, guys, one thing we have to understand is, look, I don't believe in, unnecessary stress, right? If there's any stress in your life that is unnecessary, the ideal situation here is to get rid of any unnecessary stress. But why is it that some people crumble under stress and some people thrive with stress? See, stress is a neutral force. What you have to understand is stress, right? I know, contrary to what we said, stress, it can be good and it can be bad as well. Fundamentally, it depends how we look at it, right? And how we treat stress. Stress is neutral. It's either gonna sharpen you or it's gonna destroy you, depending on how you use it. So like I mentioned, stress is either gonna fuel you or it's gonna destroy you, depending on how you use it. So let's understand, what is this? Why is this the case? So first of all, when I say stress is a good thing and stress is beneficial, what do I mean by that? Let's look at this, okay? Fundamentally, all right? Switch colors here. Stress, growth only occurs with stress, right? Plus rest. Meaning what? There's a couple of things here, right? So in order for you to be able to grow, you have to go through stress. Think of it from when you're in the gym. When you're in the gym, you have to stress your muscles in the first place, and when you rest is when your muscles grow. But if there is no stress, there's no growth, right? Think of it from a business perspective as well. In your business, when there's stress, when difficult things occur, and then there's a rest period after those difficult things, that's where your business starts to grow fundamentally. As a human being, when do you grow? When do you evolve? When do you become better? After stressful situations, during the periods where you solve that stressful situations and you're under rest, then that's where the growth occurs. So in order for you to grow, fundamentally, the only way for you to grow is to have some form of stress in your life. And that's when we see a lot of people who are complacent. It's because they have far too much rest and not enough stress. So complacency is when you have far too much rest and there's no stress in your life. And trust me, I've seen this even with my clients, right? One of my clients had the issue. He goes, Fawaz, listen, I don't feel a need to get up in the morning anymore. I've kind of lost that intrinsic motivation. Not that we rely on motivation, but intrinsic motivation is really important because you need a why as to what you're doing, right? Because when you have that great why, when you have that great reason, then there's that intrinsic motivation, that internal fire. And intrinsic motivation is always going to beat and surpass and last far longer than extrinsic motivation, right? So he didn't have enough stress in his life, which is why fundamentally his business wasn't growing. He was stagnating. And what do we know about when you stagnate? Well, you're not staying the same, you're regressing, you're getting worse over time. So imagine I'm in the gym. If I lift too light and there's not enough stress, my muscles don't grow. But if I lift too heavy, right, and there's no proper rest as well, what happens? You get injured, right? But if you lift just enough to where it's a level above you, the level of stress where it's difficult, and then you go for a rest period, your muscles grow. A business owner has to be able to handle maybe increased demand, for example. If you never experience high-stake decisions, then you're going to stay small as an entrepreneur. If you don't go through difficulties in your business or breakdowns in your company, then you're never going to what? Grow. But if you don't learn to build systems to deal with this stress, then trust me, you're going to burn out. When you do not have the systems to deal with stress, you burn out, right? So that's why we have to create a system in where we can still thrive even when we're going through stressful situations. So what are the two key fundamental things we've learned here? Number one, that stress is actually not a bad thing. Stress isn't what destroys us. It's not stress that destroys us. What destroys us is either poor recovery or number two, a poor perception. So if you're not going through the proper recovery when stress is introduced into your life and you're viewing the stress in a poor negative light, that is going to be the thing that causes stress to be bad. It's going to cause stress to damage you. And this is where you see entrepreneurs go through things like heart attacks, difficult situations, they can't get out of bed, they deal with insomnia, which is things that I was dealing with at one stage as well. I remember at the time my banks got locked up. It was a very, very stressful situation, right? They've lost 200K of my wealth, right? Just locked up in a bank, and I can't pay the things I need to pay for. I got salaries to pay. I got clients which I had agreements for other companies, where my clients, we had some sort of agreement, my investors. I need to pay all of them. But quite frankly, now my money's been locked. It was a stressful situation. I ended up getting into deep insomnia. I couldn't sleep, which was negatively affecting my performance during the day. There's loads of things I couldn't do. Why? Because I was viewing it wrong. I had the wrong perception. And when I changed how I perceived the situation, it actually became a force of good. And why? And I'm going to show you guys how to change your perception on stress as well. You see, when I changed my perception on stress, I made more money in the next following 6 months than I'd ever made in my life, just from changing my perception, right? Perfect. So how do we change our perception on stress? So we have to look at it like this. Fundamentally, okay, when you have low stress, you have no motivation, right? So a founder with no urgency to execute, if there's no urgency to do something, there's no reason to do something, you don't execute. You have no motivation to get that thing done. There's no urgency, there's no stress, life is good. And that's why whenever suddenly your finances drop below what you're comfortable with, you suddenly get that boost of hard work, that boost of motivation, you start hustling because there's stress involved in your life. But when there's no stress, you don't get growth, right? So we want a level of what? Optimal stress when it comes to our lives, our businesses, and that forces us to grow, be able to focus and introduce peak performance. So over here, we have stress. So we have your performance, how well you perform. And over here we have stress. So guys, if you're to imagine, over here we have your performance level, so how well you perform, and stress. Right now we can just go ahead and divide this into 3 categories, right? So you can see that when there's no stress in your life, when the stress is little in your life, what happens is your performance is actually quite low, right? So you're bored. There's no real interest there for you. There's no stress. There's no difficulty. There's nothing you're working towards. There's nothing pushing you. So you have no motivation at this point. No motivation, right? Over here is where you start to get as the stress increases, you get slightly more aroused. So here's where we start seeing improvements when the stress level starts to increase. But how do we reach that peak performance when the stress is just right? Right? So we don't want stress to a point where it's like over here, where it's like really high, right? We want it to where the stress is just right. That's when we're at our highest level of performance. This is where you max focus, right? This is where your creativity comes in, right? This is where you're engaged. You become engaged. Your work starts to feel effortless, right? So we talk about a flow state. This is where we get into that flow. When we're here, when the stress level is just right. But at the same time, if you're going through way too much stress without the proper rest, etc., what happens is you start to get exhausted. And this is where majority of entrepreneurs don't know when to shut off, when they're allowing the stress to become too much, which leads to what? Burnout. And eventually your performance just straight down. So the point what I'm trying to establish here is we want the right amount of stress, and that's when we perform at our best, when it's not too much, and when the stress isn't too little. So fundamentally, stress is absolutely important in order for you to what? In order for you to actually grow your company here. So when you're over on this side, guys, you start to make poor decisions, right? You start to get some anxiety, you start to burn out, and then you can't perform, right? So a business owner, when he's too overwhelmed and he has no clarity, no focus, no recovery, right? That's where he can't move forward. And by the way, business owners, majority of these times are stuck between phase 1 and phase 3, right? So it's either they're just complacent, they're not getting anything done, there's no stress in their lives, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or number 3, they're just burnt out. So they're constantly jumping between the two, but it's here where we need to be. The key isn't to avoid stress, but to balance it with adequate recovery. This is how high performers grow over time. It's not about avoiding stress, it's about balancing stress with the adequate recovery. So entrepreneurs, the ideal is we want to find ourselves in the optimal level right here, right? At the optimal stress levels, where it's not too easy, but things aren't too overwhelming. Now let's talk about this from a biological standpoint. So what actually happens in your brain and your body when you learn to deal with difficulties, when you view problems as a good thing rather than a bad thing, okay? So there's 2 types of stress responses, okay? 2 types of stress responses. The wrong way of responding to stress, and then fundamentally there's the right way of responding to stress. So let's compare these 2. What is the right versus the wrong way of responding to stress? So when you view stress incorrectly, what actually happens? So you get cognitive overload, right? This is where your mind sees that there's too much going on, right? When you perceive stress as a threat, you release high levels of cortisol, right? So your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, it goes up. It's very problematic, by the way. When cortisol reaches certain levels, it's responsible for inflammation, heart attacks, all kinds of disease problems, fatigues, headache. Loads of issues just stem from too much cortisol, right? Brain fog. You get brain fog. You can't think. Anxiety. How many entrepreneurs do we know that are facing anxiety? It's like the heart is about to come out of their chest, right? And too much cortisol, by the way, is directly linked to heart attack. And a majority of issues are linked to high cortisol, right? Majority of health issues. Muscle breakdown as well sometimes. And that's why entrepreneurs, they cramp up a lot, right? Muscle breakdown. That's what happens when your cortisol is too high. Your decision making becomes poor. Right? So bad decision making, right? And you get burnt out eventually. So what happens if I choose to perceive stress as a good thing, right? As a good thing. Well, what happens here, guys, if we perceive stress in a positive light, we actually release DHEA. Now, DHEA is actually the hormone, right, that is responsible for actually beating cortisol, okay? It's a buffer towards cortisol as well, and it turns your stress into fuel instead of breakdown. It actually allows you to grow. So when you view stress in the right way, scientifically speaking, you release more DHEA in your body than cortisol as well, right? So you start to learn faster. Right? You learn faster. You become more resilient. Right? Better at problem solving. These are all the things that happen when you just choose to view stress in a positive light. Now, what is my proof for this? All right? I know it's a big claim. What is my evidence? There's a scientific study done, right, by Stanford University. The doctor's name was like Dr. Crum or something like that, right? She said, all right, they ran tests and they found that participants who trained to view stress as a positive thing rather than a negative thing, they had more DHEA to cortisol ratios. Meaning these guys released more DHEA than cortisol. So cortisol, if you don't manage your cortisol levels, it's a fire that's gonna destroy you. Whereas DHEA is a fire that's gonna fuel you, allows you to grow. So your perception of stress, just how you view stress, whether you view it as a good thing or a bad thing, depends which hormone you're going to release more. So how do we learn to view stress in a positive light? So firstly, this is actually something we work my clients to, because one of my clients, all she used to do is complain to me like, as I've been through X, Y, Z, I've been through this. I was like, look, it doesn't matter what you've been through or what you're going through. If you view that all as a negative thing, It's going to stress you, it's going to grant you anxiety. But if you choose to view it as a positive thing, right, you actually grow from it. So you have to develop what I refer to as the challenge or the opportunity mindset. And by the way, this is completely Islamic as well. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentions, عَجَبٍ لِأُمُورِ الْمُؤْمِنِ فَكُلُّهُ أَمْرُهُ خَيْرٌ. Strange is the affair of the believer, for he chooses to see everything as good. He sees good in everything. What is that? That's an opportunity mindset, that there's good in this thing, right? And look at that, scientifically speaking as well, just by changing how you perceive something, you actually receive, like hormones are produced that are more beneficial for you than damaging. So what if I said, instead of saying, oh, I'm stressed, I said, it's okay, I'm getting stronger, right? And this isn't about positive self-talk, etc. This is about genuinely changing the way you see it. Instead of seeing business setbacks as, oh, this is a threat, right? This is a really bad thing. Why don't you see like, okay, maybe this is something that's gonna sharpen us. We can only come out of this stronger. So if you see, certain times, one of my clients, he was struggling because his business was rapidly scaling. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen Asim, right? His business went from 13K, he was making around 13K, to suddenly making 500K per month, right? Alhamdulillah, through working with us. And when we fixed his bottleneck, alhamdulillah, he was able to go from 13K to 500K per month. But that came with certain stresses. He's handling more money, more issues than he's ever handled in his life, right? That comes with 500K worth of problems that he was never used to, right? At 13K, right? So what did we do? I told him on the call, I got on a call with him, I was, you need to reframe the way you're seeing this, right? Don't see it as a threat back, as a threat. Rather sharpen your skills. Understand that new levels come with new devils, as my friend Sam Amin likes to say, right? New levels come with new devils. It's a good thing. View it in a positive light. So for me, I don't view things as setbacks anymore. I view them as opportunities. And if you see, the best companies in the world take this on. Whenever something bad happens, they see how they can turn this into a positive thing, how they can use this to benefit them. So guys, like we mentioned, right? Rather than viewing yourself as overwhelmed, see, this is a good thing. I'm preparing myself to jump to the next level. View stress as a positive thing. Stress alone is not enough, right? Growth happens, like we mentioned, in the recovery phase, right? So don't forget, like we mentioned, stress plus rest is when we get growth. So it's only when both things are present can we get growth. Now guys, inshallah, I'm going to be dropping a video on how to rest effectively. But guys, listen, if you would like us to help you with all of these things, and you understand that you have such a high level of potential, but it's you who's standing in your own way, then go ahead in the description right now and just book a call with myself, and we'll see how we can get you to the next level. Right now, we only work with guys making over 100K per year, right? Making multiple six figures. So if you are not, then we also have a different link. Inshallah, you can go through the funnel and you'll get one of our team members. But I myself, inshallah, we only work with entrepreneurs that are making 100K, multiple six figures a year, okay? And we help them scale. We have a very strict qualification process, and we only take a certain amount of clients on per month. And that is because fundamentally, I understand that if we can get your full potential out, we can help you achieve the highest level, right? You're gonna be operating at a level that you've, quite frankly, never operated at in your life. Right? Guaranteed. So if you would like us to help you reach your full potential, then just go in the link in the description and book a call with myself, and I will aid you in getting this full version out of yourself. Now, another way to get better at your stress response, right? To build your, this is actually what we refer to, your ability to, like, you know, deal with stress, etc., is what we refer to in performance terms as your stress response. Your stress response. So how do you train your stress response, right? Something that is very, very beautiful and is very, very important to do as well, right? Because if we can train our stress response, we can really completely, like, just change a lot of things about ourselves. If we can improve our stress response, we stop making poor decisions, we stop getting anxiety and issues, etc. So I have 3 advices, right, when it comes to improving your stress response, and we're going to take them one by one. So the first one is genuinely pause. Right? So whenever you have a stressful situation, just pause for a second. Now, this is what we refer to as, you know, moving from observation, rather than moving to being an observer rather than being the subject, right? So you're actually observing the situation. You're stepping out of it rather than looking at the situation I'm in and thinking, oh my God, like this is such a difficult situation. Rather, what you want to do is just observe it for a second. Like, whoa, like, okay, what am I currently going through? What's the problem here, right? Is it even a bad thing? What's the good things that could come out of this? So you want to pause and then you want to reframe, right? So you want to kind of silence all of those negative thoughts, right? Say, fiha khair, right? Reframe, right? Say, fiha khair, in it there's good. Alhamdulillah, there's good in this, and inshallah, it's going to work out as something that's good for me. Even if you can't see it, you have to have that level of tawakkul that, yeah, there's good in this. So pause and reframe, right? And then think solutions, right? Only when you reframe can you actually start to come up with solutions. If you're still thinking about it from a negative light, you can't come up with solutions. So if you want to improve your stress response, just pause. Whenever the issue arises, pause. Look at it from an observer's perspective, right? So third party witness consciousness is also what it's called, to witness consciousness, right? So look at it as an observer. Step outside the box, right? Just observe the situation. Reframe. Turn your thoughts positive. Alhamdulillah mindset is also what it's referred to as. Alhamdulillah. Right? Alhamdulillah. In it there's good. Fiha khair. And then think solutions now. That's the best way to deal with stress. After that, trust me, anxiety gone out the window, right? So instead of avoiding high stake decisions, just expose yourself gradually to these things, right? I'm going to give you guys a perfect example of this, right? Another thing you can do to train your stresses. So even guys, I'm going to give you an example of how entrepreneurs just stress themselves even in the most simple of scenarios, right? So let's say you're stuck in traffic, right? So you're stuck in traffic. What the majority of entrepreneurs do, they just get vexed. I'm stuck in traffic. I'm late for a meeting. It's a super important meeting. Just pause. Okay, I'm stuck in traffic. Is there anything I can do about it? No. Fundamentally, is me getting stressed about this and getting angry gonna fix this? No. So reframe. Look, in it there's good. Maybe Allah is saving me from something, blah, 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 whatever it is, in it there is good. Why? Because Allah will for it to happen this way. And just think solutions. Next time as well, I should probably leave my house earlier. And in this time, I could probably practice and start to prepare myself, getting a routine for what I'm gonna discuss in that meeting. So isn't that a much better way to deal with being stuck in traffic than thinking, flip's sake, I'm stuck in traffic, I don't know what to do, getting your head off the wall, right? So rather, just pause, reframe, and think of a solution. And that's how you move forward, quite simply, right? Now, another thing you can do, and I genuinely advise entrepreneurs do, on the last page here, I think, or second last, right, is train. Train your stress response. How does one train their stress response, right? Bruv, jogs, going to the gym, right? And I really advise, if you want to become really good at training, and I recommend this for a lot of my clients, what I started as well at the time when I wanted to improve, and I still do, alhamdulillah, was Muay Thai. If you train a combat sport, there's nothing that teaches you more how to deal with stress than combat sports. Why? Because quite frankly, you understand that when you're in combat, okay, when you're training, the worst thing you could possibly do is stress, right? So I remember my trainer would he'd hit me with the bag in the head, right? He'd give me a nice one. Shoot. And he'd say, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Just continue. It's fine, it's normal, right? So I'm doing pads, gives me a nice one to the head, right? I just can't, just continue, just continue. So it trains you that even when you get punched in the face, it's not that deep. Just continue. Just keep pushing, right? And trust me, that will translate to your business as well, right? That will translate to a lot of things. Try to put yourself in stressful situations. I had one of my friends, right? He's actually my partner as well. One of the things that we're doing as well, when it came to training his stress response, he just used to go in a pool, right? Now, again, do this with some sort of form of supervision, and I'm not endorsing this, right? But what my friends used to do is we'd go under a pool, right? And we just hold our breath. We'd hold our breaths under the pool. And you learn that there's this point where your mind starts to panic and it's like, lift your head up, get out of the water, get out of the water. But you're actually fine, right? One of the things we actually did on our last retreat, I'll see if we can put some clips on the screen. We tied the brothers' hands and their legs, right? Because we want to teach them stress response training, right? Which is what we do on our retreats. They're absolutely live, by the way. We tied the brothers' hands and their feet. We tied them with a rope, like tight. And we threw them in a relatively deep pool, right? And they had to swim from one end to the whole other end, which was, it's a healthy distance, right? With their hands tied and their feet tied as well. This really helped them with their stress response. Because when you first get into the water, what's your first instinct? You need to start moving. You're trying to get your head above the water, but you realize your hands are tied up. I'm telling you, the guys who sunk and just drowned, and they didn't actually drown, but they just went straight to the bottom, and there was people inside the pool, don't worry, taking care of things. It's because they panicked. But the guys who were able to just calm down, pause, okay, I can't move my hands. I'm not meant to move my hands, they're tied. So what we're going to try to do, let's try to warm it out. Let's try to move the other parts of our body. They were way more effective in the exercise. All you have to do is train your stress response, right? So you see this with Navy SEALs as well. They train them to be able to what? Deal with high stress situations, because automatically you become more effective. So guys, if you want structured systems to build all these things in your life, to turn stress into strength, then click the link in the bio and let's build you a high performance mindset. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, book a call with myself and we will take care of you like we do all our clients, alhamdulillah. And yeah, guys, we've worked with a lot of the big entrepreneurs in the space. We've got them to where they need to be. We take this stuff very, very seriously because it is serious. If you can lock all these things, we know you're good at the technicals already. We know you know loads of marketing, loads of sales. I know you've read plenty of those books. What's stopping you is you. So when we unlock that version of you, I'm sure we can get you to where you need to be. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So guys, I hope you benefited greatly from this, inshallah. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.